Welcome in. Today we're going to talk about something that can feel like a really big deal if you're living with multiple sclerosis, the driving fitness test. I know it can seem intimidating, but we're going to break it all down step by step to take the mystery out of it.
So if this test is on your horizon, you're probably feeling at least a little bit anxious. And hey, that's totally normal. You're definitely not the only one. Our whole goal here is to give you a clear roadmap of what's coming so you can go in there feeling a lot more prepared and, a little less stressed. So let's just dive right in.
Okay, before we get into all the nitty-gritty details, let's zoom out for a second. It's really easy to look at this test and just see it as another obstacle, but it's not meant to be a trick or a trap. It's actually a standard process, and it has one very specific, very important purpose.
When you boil it all down, this whole thing is about one word: safety. Your safety and the safety of everybody else on the road. The evaluation is really just looking at those fundamental skills, both physical and mental, that we all need to be safe behind the wheel. It's so important to remember this isn't a judgment on you or your MS. It's simply a check of your current driving abilities.
All right, let's start getting into the actual test, beginning with the first big part, the physical evaluation. This whole section is focused on, well, exactly what it sounds like: your physical ability to control a car. The physical checkup is basically broken into two parts. First, they'll do a neurological exam, and then you'll move on to what's called a driving simulation. Let's take a look at what happens in each one. The first piece, that neurological exam, is probably going to feel really familiar to you. Honestly, if you've been to routine appointments for MS, you've likely done all this stuff before. They're just checking your basic movement, your sensation, and your balance to get a good, clear picture of your physical skills. After that, it's on to the driving simulator. And here's the thing you really need to know. This is not a scary on-the-road test. It's all done in a safe, controlled room. You'll be using pedals, reacting to things on a screen, and the whole point is just to measure concrete things like how fast you react and your basic control, all without the pressure of actual traffic.
Okay. Once the physical part is wrapped up, the evaluation shifts gears and starts to look at your cognitive skills. This is where they take a look at the mental side of driving through a couple of different kinds of tasks.
So we can break these cognitive tests down into a few different buckets. This first bunch of tasks is all about checking out your memory and your concentration. And of course, those are both totally essential for being aware and safe when you're driving.
So what does that actually mean? Well, you might get a task like count backwards from 200 by sevens. It sounds like a weird math test, right? But it's not really about the math. It's about testing your working memory, how well your brain can hang on to information while doing something else. It's the same idea with repeating numbers, both forwards and backwards. It's just a classic way to see how well you can focus and juggle information in your head. All right, the next group of mental tasks changes focus a little bit. These ones are all about your visual skills and your planning abilities. The stuff you use to navigate traffic, judge spaces, and just understand what's happening all around you.
And they test these skills in some really practical ways. For instance, you might be asked to draw a clock and set the hands to a certain time, like 10:20. It sounds so simple, but it's a surprisingly good test of your spatial planning. Or you might copy a complex shape, which checks your visual skills and hand-eye coordination. And then, of course, identifying traffic signs, just to make sure that critical road knowledge is right there when you need it. Now, on top of those other tasks we just talked about, there's one last big part of the cognitive assessment, and this section is done completely on a computer.
And here is a really key piece of information you'll want to have going in. This part of the test isn't short. It takes about an hour to get through. Knowing that ahead of time is huge because it means this part of the test is also checking your mental stamina. It's all about keeping your focus over a long stretch, so pacing yourself is really going to be your friend here.
Now, listen to this because this is a super practical tip that comes directly from people who've been through it. The testing room itself might be pretty warm, and since we know heat can sometimes make MS symptoms worse or just make it harder to concentrate, it's a fantastic idea to dress in layers or just be mentally ready for that. It's a small thing that can make a big difference.
Okay, so you've done it. You've made it through all the physical and cognitive tests. So what now? In this last part, let's cover a couple of final tips and talk about what to expect while you're waiting for those results. One thing you might notice during the test is that you get asked the same questions more than once, maybe about your driving routines or other habits. The best way to handle this is super simple. Just be patient and answer honestly every time. They're not trying to catch you, they're just being thorough.
And then, the waiting game begins. After you finish the test, it usually takes about a month and a half before you'll get your official results back in the mail. We wanted to show you this timeline just to help you set your expectations, because knowing how long it might take can make that waiting period feel a little less endless.
And finally, let's just acknowledge that this whole thing is tough. It can be draining physically and mentally. But no matter what happens, it's a challenge you can get through. As one person who shared their story put it so well, a spark of hope can always accompany you. And that's just a beautiful reminder that facing things like this isn't just about the result, it's about holding on to that hope as you move forward. Thanks so much for joining me today.